Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt. I'm a messenger with United Network News. If you haven't heard of UNN before, we are the official news channel for CARE, which stands for the Center for Amity and Restoration of Earth. We are a group of people that are focused on changing this planet for the better, changing it from a dark planet full of a lot of horrible things that were happening on this planet for many, many years, and transitioning into the light. You know, there's so many beautiful things that are coming our way. And right now, guys, we are in a transition period. And there's a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of disinformation out there. But what we talk about is the real news, because sometimes it's hard to discern what's really happening, right? And we have a newscast that's released through our online distribution platform on our website, unitednetwork.tv. Our newscast comes out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And whenever we have our world situation report, that's when one of these podcast episodes come out. So just to give you a little bit of background on unitednetwork.tv, that is a membership platform. So you do need to have a subscription in order to watch the main newscast, which is why we created this podcast. On this podcast, we highlight some of the stories we cover on the newscast, and I try to give you some behind-the-scenes information. We cover local stories through what we call our field messengers, and those are everyday people that are going out and telling us what's happening in their backyard. Maybe not exactly in their backyard, in their community, right? So they'll get out their iPhones or their smartphone. They'll start taking pictures and video, and we find that this is extremely reliable information, especially when the mainstream media is just shoving this stuff down our throats that is not real. It is not real. It is the very definition of fake news. And we believe our field messengers are a way to combat that because you guys care what's happening in your community. And if the news is reporting something that's not accurate, well, we need to know that. And so our field messengers are absolutely amazing. So we've got some of those stories in each newscast. We also have a new segment called New Earth because we're trying to prepare humanity for where we're going next. I know it can seem, with the mainstream media out there and even the alternative media that like everything's going to hell in a handbasket. I get it. This is the deep state, which is not just a U.S. thing, okay, but it's all over the world. It is their final moments before they go under forever, which is incredible because they have been around for a very, very long time. There has been a plan in place of where they wanted Earth to go, which was very nefarious and very dark, literally dark, trying to take the planet into the lower astral. And so this is kind of where news meets church or news meets insert religious institution here, because some of the stuff that you've heard, no doubt, whatever faith you are, a lot of the major faiths, at least here on our planet, all kind of come back to similar stories, right? A battle from, good versus evil. And we are right in the heart of all of this. It's a pretty incredible time to be alive. So the good news is the good has overcome the evil. Now, there are some people that haven't gotten the memo yet. We're going to talk about that more in the World Situation Report. But as our planet transitions, there's going to be amazing things that happen. And so we're trying to prepare you for that. So that's the New Earth stories. We also have regional stories, and we break down the news into not quite continents, almost continents. And we talk about news that's happening there. So I've got some stories to share with you. And then we have our World Situation Report, which a lot of times takes us off planet or talks about things that aren't just terrestrial here to Earth. And it's information you're not going to get anywhere else. We have access to the highest security clearance on the planet. We do not get our information from third-party resources that are trying to control humanity. That is the difference between us and anything you would see on mainstream media or even the alternative media, because it's two heads of the same coin. And some of the stuff that we talk about is going to seem a bit out there for people who are just kind of waking up to what this planet is all about, what's really happening here. Because for most of us, there's just something kind of like, I would say, in your spirit something that's just telling you something is not right here. You might not be able to put your finger on what's going on, but something isn't right. And so we talk about those things. We talk about what's really happening because you have a sixth sense. Let's just call it that, a sixth sense about the world, the planet, and what's happening in it. And something's off. But I do encourage you that when we talk about things on this podcast, on the newscast, that you do your own research, okay? We are not here to spoon feed you information. We're here to help give you information so that you can go down your own rabbit holes, do your own research, and figure out the answer, because it's not until you figure things out for yourself. Someone can't just tell you this. I run into people all the time that are like, Sunny, tell me this. Sunny, tell me that. I'm like, I really can't. I mean, I could, but you probably wouldn't believe me. It's when you do your own research and the light bulb starts to go off. That's when it really starts to sink in. So don't just take our word for it. And don't just take other people's word for it. If people are saying stuff on mainstream media, please don't just take their word for it. Do research on what they're saying. I guarantee it's going to come up flat. Think critically and ask questions. Here is the rundown for Monday, October 9th, 2023. So our newscasts always kick off with our field messenger reports because we believe they are so important. It really is what United Network News is all about. By the way, if you want some information on becoming a field messenger, you can go to unitednetwork.news. We do have a section where you can see different stories and we can give you ideas on how you can create your stories, different production tips, all that good stuff. And we also, I think we're having one coming up here soon where you can do kind of a Zoom call and suggest story ideas and, work more directly with people that are part of our production team. So be on the lookout for that. I'll try to announce that on the podcast when we have an actual date. So there's 2 field messenger reports I want to tell you about today. One is out of Vietnam. So Kelvin created this field messenger report for us. And this is kind of a fun story. This is about Rimba Raid, which is an event. It's actually a Malaysian event, but the report is from the perspective of people in Vietnam that are participating in this. So there's motorcyclists, and they go through 3 countries to get over to Malaysia: Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, and then finally into Malaysia. There's 7 riders. And it's supposed to take 15 days to do, but they're trying to do it in 10 days, I believe. So it's kind of a fun story. By the way, kind of a sidebar here, but Calvin does a really good job. I don't know what camera he's using. It's probably, literally, you can use your smartphone nowadays, right? When we talk about equipment to do these field messenger reports, it's basically whatever's in your back pocket. But these phones are getting really, really good. So he shot some really good footage of the motorcycles and even interviewed, I think, the guy that kind of put this together from the Vietnam side of things. And so it's just kind of a fun report. But they go through the jungles and everything. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what's in those jungles? They do have like first aid kits and things like that. I think they got a sponsor. So not sure when this event took place. Probably it's already over by now. But Calvin, thank you so much for sharing this story with us. It's just kind of fun to see what other cultures are doing. And then our second story is from Nakata Hamza, and he is in Uganda. And this is another really good story. It's shot really, really well. It's so funny, you guys, because that's not the most important thing, right? What's most important is that we get the information out there, regardless of whatever form it takes. But it's just really nice when you do get stories that, the video looks really pretty. And this is another one of those. I was mentioning this to the UNN team before we started recording for the news. I'm like, oh my gosh, the footage looks amazing. Anyway, the story behind it, it's all about water collection in Uganda. And Nakata Hamza I'm not sure if it's his orphanage or if he just works at this orphanage, but there are these amazing, beautiful children. And he takes this video of this trek that they make every day. In fact, these kids, because they are kids, are making this trek sometimes 5 times per day. They walk, it's an hour-long walk to go get water. And, I'd love to say that this is beautiful, Christine, pristine, whatever water that they're going to, but it's not. It's contaminated water. So the story is, check out, these kids. They do this multiple times per day, morning, afternoon, I believe like multiple times in the evening, because they have to go get water. They can't just turn on a faucet. Sometimes we forget that, it's like first world problems, like, oh, my iPhone isn't working today or whatever. And there's real problems out there, real problems. And obviously, fixing the water issue around the world is something that CARE is going to be focused on. And we appreciate Nakata Hamza to share with us like what his area is going through. And like I said, he did a really good job with the story. So thank you for that. Let's talk about the new earth. I love to think about, well, what's coming? So many times we kind of get stuck in the moment because there's so much happening right now, and the whole thing with Israel and Palestine, Hamas, which we'll get to in the World Situation Report. But sometimes we forget we are fighting this battle because what is coming is unbelievable. Never happened before. So there's nothing to compare it to, but we are transitioning into a new earth, a new way of doing things and being on the light side of things as opposed to living in these horrible dark ages, which have happened for so long. So we like to share stories with you guys that motivate and inspire you. And we have a couple stories that I wanted to share with you that are inspirational. First is a company. It's actually a small business in Germany. They call themselves Tiny Farms. And they have developed this tool to help farmers understand what consumers want. And it's helping them with creating more sales and less waste, right? When it comes to farming, less waste. And they call this bio-intensive farming. It results in efficient land and energy use, which is why they call themselves tiny farms, because you don't need a huge space to do this. In fact, they were saying for 1.2 acres, you can generate revenue of $63,000 annually, and about $24,000 of that is profit. So this is getting us, getting our heads out of thinking that we got to go to the store for food. This is how we, have been doing this for so long. But really, we should all know how to grow food. We really should. And I'm not saying that has to be your full-time job or anything, but these ideas are giving us ways to help provide for ourselves. And we may hit a bumpy patch here. We've said before, governments are going to collapse. All world governments are going to collapse. And when that happens, a lot of the big corporations are going to collapse as well. We don't know how fast that's going to happen, but it is going to happen, which means you're not going to be able to go to whatever store and just grab, your favorite treat off the shelves. We have to be thinking of how do we do this with just the people without the government getting involved? And so tiny farms could be one of those answers. They have plans to expand to 1,000 farms by 2030. So definitely thinking about different ways to handle farming, which is what we need. The next story is about Pakistan and how they have these smokeless stoves. And this is happening in rural areas. They are very low cost. They are made of mud bricks, I should say, and lime. And we actually have some video of women creating these because even though some communities were given these stoves, the whole idea is, don't just be reliant on something someone gives you. Learn how to create these and build them so you can have more in your community, so you can, make a living doing this. And usually it's the women that are involved in this because it has to do with cooking, right? And in many cultures, that's left up to the women. So they're taught now to build these stoves. They actually have a term for them. I don't know if I like this term or not. I guess it doesn't really matter, but they call them barefoot village entrepreneurs. So I like the entrepreneurs part, and maybe they are barefoot. I don't know. But this has been going on since 2014. And now, at this point, since 2014 to current day, they have produced, I guess you could say, 40,000 of these stoves, which have helped about 300,000 people. So again, how they do this, this is important to think about. What if, your power goes down? Things like that. You can use this is like instead of a wood-burning stove, because here's the issue with wood-burning stove. Say that 5 times fast. It can cause respiratory issues, eye infections, the list goes on and on. So if you're in a civilization where that's primarily, how they're cooking and, making their food, then this is a great alternative. So I love that this story gave women an opportunity to earn a living, to help other people out, to make a difference in their community. And the last story I want to tell you about in the New Earth, it's actually an interview that I did. We talk with Ludi Green, she happens to be a friend of mine, but I met her because I had a podcast, still do, that focuses on women, family, children, and she knows a lot about domestic violence as well as human trafficking. And so I got to know her in the past based on her work. And she has worked with governments. She's done a lot of amazing things. And so I asked her to come on the news to talk about domestic violence. So it just so happens that October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. But here's the thing. Do we really need a month to tell us that domestic violence is not a good thing and it needs to come to an end? No, we don't. I think we're smarter than that. And as we transition into this new earth, we have to claim our sovereignty again. And if someone is taking that sovereignty away from you, I don't care if it's the deep state or the government or your husband or your wife, it doesn't matter. That has to stop. And so Ludi talks to us. She talks to us about what domestic violence is. And then she also breaks down the 3 different types of domestic violence, because we want to be aware of what this looks like. Maybe it's to help us in our own homes. Maybe it's to help other people that we meet. But we have got to put an end to this. It's time. In our regional news, I'm going to skip the Israel-Palestine war for a second, because that's really what the World Situation Report is about. We did lead with that story in today's newscast, but I'm going to hold off on that for a bit. The 3 stories that I want to share with you get you thinking a little bit, which, I think is important. Use your brain, think critically, right? The first is about nickel miners in Indonesia. So this area in Indonesia is at risk for deforestation because there is this huge demand for electric vehicle batteries. And I know we've talked about this before. Everyone's like, oh, electric vehicles, they're so amazing. They help the environment. Nothing could be further from the truth, okay? And it's stories like this that don't make it out for people to really be able to weigh their options. They don't have all the information to make a logical decision on whether or not, if you're trying to save the environment, tearing up and creating deforestation, is that the way to save the environment? I don't think so. But what's happening here in Indonesia is it's harming villages. It's leading to waste, pollution, high carbon emissions, displacement of villages. It's horrible. And the Indonesia government, no doubt, is getting a huge kickback for this. And they're urging mining companies to reforest depleted areas and improve practices. That is their solution. Oh, just plant some more stuff, and all that stuff that you're messing up, just, reforest it, because that's going to save the day. And, try to improve your practices. Yeah, that's their answer, which means they're getting paid, right? They don't care. And like we said, governments are crashing, and they will continue to do so until they are no more. So that's basically what's happening here. But the horrible thing is, this is hurting Indonesia. The country has such a rich biodiversity, or you know what I'm saying, it's very biodiverse, okay? And so all of that is at stake right now. So it's very upsetting, and people see this, but the local people see it. But usually this doesn't make it out. So if you're thinking about some sort of an electric vehicle or whatever, think about the people in Indonesia and what they're going through, because I guarantee they're not thinking this is very good for the environment. Next story, Uganda. This is taking place in Uganda. Mothers are filing lawsuits against the government, local councils, and the church diocese, which I thought was interesting. What's happening there is these women experience some complications during childbirth, And they say they were unlawfully detained in a hospital for weeks because they weren't able to pay their medical bills. Which sounds crazy because they just gave birth. How do you detain a mother with a newborn baby? It sounds like some sort of horrible punishment. They said that they were denied food. They were also asked to stay to work off their debt. So, hey, you can't pay your bill. Now you've got to stay and work, which, again, can't be great for a mother who just gave birth. And, this just shines a light on healthcare in general, right? And how messed up it is. Uganda actually has free healthcare, but a lot of it is inaccessible or it lacks the necessary provisions, like what people need. Is it any good if it's free, if it's not what you need, if it's not up to par? Probably not. But nowadays, when people say free healthcare, everyone thinks, oh, everything's free, it's going to be amazing. And that's never what happens. Uganda is a great example of that. Now, what CARE is planning to do with assurance is completely different. And we're not going to go into that today. But that is not the same thing as just free healthcare, and but you're not really going to get what you need. Like, again, that doesn't really help. Are we going to have free healthcare? Well, define free, because we have been paying for this for a very long time in many different ways. But as far as a ton of money coming out of your pocket, you not being able to connect with providers that, you want to give your money to, that you want to, I was going to say work with, but that's not quite the word that I'm looking for, that, you want to be part of your healthcare routine, well, you're going to have a lot more options moving forward. And so it's important to notice that this kind of stuff is happening, this crazy stuff. Mothers that just gave birth are being forced to stay in hospitals to work off their debt in a country that has free healthcare. Wait, something's really wrong here. And our final story is about genetic testing theft. So you guys have probably heard of the company 23andMe. They were promoting themselves all over the place there for a while. They say personal data from their system is now being offered for sale on the black market. But here's the interesting thing. They said their systems were not compromised, which it's like, okay, so you're saying no one stole it. It's really unclear how the information then made it to the black market. But they're saying that the data that was taken includes names, birth dates, locations, genetic ancestry results, basically a lot of your personal stuff out there that you don't want out there is apparently on the black market. And you have to wonder why these types of stories are coming out. Usually they're not going to admit any kind of fault unless it could come back and really hurt them financially. But here's the interesting thing. If you don't already know this, the whole genetic testing to find out, oh, my relatives are from here or whatever, this was always set up as a plan against you to harm humanity. That is the truth. I mean, it's kind of the same thing with like all the surveillance and everything they have out there on us. They want to know where we are, where we live, where we're from. This has been used in the medical industry a lot too. So for example, 23andMe has collaborated with pharmaceutical companies to test new medications. So they are taking your information that you gave them to find out where Grandpa Joe is really from, and they are selling it to third-party companies so they can test medications. I don't know about you, but I never saw a check because I happened, unfortunately, many, many years ago to do something like this. I never received a check. I really don't remember. Maybe it got lost in the mail. I have not gotten any money, from my data, my personal information being used. So the whole genetic testing is a farce in general. But it's interesting that these stories are starting to come out, and you wonder why is this happening now? And I think it's because they haven't been on the side of humanity. And in a light-based system, the truth comes out. And maybe they're trying to get ahead of the story. But the moral to this story is don't do genetic testing because the data is not that good anyways. Just so you know, it's not that good. Whatever you're going to get back is not that good. And they're using this against you, and they're using it to make a profit. Okay, it's time for the World Situation Report with Kimberly Gogan from the Office of the Guardian. So she is our ground command. And it's important to know that because today we're talking about war. We are talking about Israel, who says they are officially at war. Benjamin Netanyahu, their prime minister, for another round. I don't know why they brought him back, but they did. They are saying now that Hamas has attacked them. I don't know if you guys saw that video. We actually played it on the news and looked like a planned demolition to me. I encourage you guys to check it out for yourself. Don't take my word for it, but they're claiming that it was an attack from Hamas. And that's not what it looked like. It kind of looked like another 9/11 incident where an implosion occurred from within the building. That's what it looks like. So in addition to what we talk about in the World Situation Report about this, we did do a story in our regional stories. And I want to talk about that for a second because it relates to all of this. There is a story behind why this is happening right now. And it's not because this is the end of the world and all the religious texts said that we're going to have Armageddon, before all these saviors come back, right? I mean, that's what they want you to believe. That's, they're relying on a lot of people's religious faith to carry them through this because they don't have any money. But let me tell you the background story. So 7 years ago, the Rothschild family, which we've talked about many times on the news, they're also the Khazarian mafia family, all right? They had a plan to kill 70% of the Jewish population in Israel because they're not real Jews. The Rothschilds, they say they're Jews. They're not real Jews. Khazarians are not real Jews. But there are real Jews, and they specifically wanted to go after the Orthodox Jews, who they consider to be their enemy. And they thought this war was going to start somewhere between 2022 and 2025. Obviously, we're right in the middle of that now. This was a pre-planned war, which, by the way, all wars are pre-planned for a purpose. They're usually very well funded, and the outcome is even predetermined. But this is a little bit different here. So they got instructions for a pre-planned war that was supposed to happen sometime 2022 to 2025. They did not create these instructions. This came from on high, okay? So way up in their horrible Luciferian cult group, the orders came down, and they actually didn't get the instructions to launch it now because there's no one there to give instructions anymore. There's no one at the top of this pyramid thing that they had going on, listening to demons and all that kind of stuff. Those, were more towards the top. But that's not happening anymore. They're not getting those instructions. But they were aware that this war was supposed to happen right about this time. And they felt they had to get it started quickly because the Rothschilds, as we've been talking about, are losing credibility. People are not believing that they have any money anymore because they don't have any money. And they keep promising money, and then they say that people are going to get it on such and such day, and that day comes and goes. And lo and behold, nobody has any money. So this was their answer to that. Oh, we're losing credibility everywhere, but man, maybe we can get those holy wars going. And maybe, we'll start Armageddon, and then some horrible lower astral beings will come and save the day, and we'll, have access to the financial system again. This is their plan because they are all out of ideas. Not that they ever had any great ideas to begin with, because again, they were order takers. But this is why all of this seemed to start kind of overnight. It was like, what the heck? I went to bed on Friday, U.S. time, and woke up Saturday to a war. What in the world is going on? So let's go ahead and play a soundbite from the World Situation Report. This is Kim getting us up to speed on this pre-planned war.
Well, the whole purpose behind this exercise of doing this now, which was actually sooner than they had anticipated, is because they wanted to install their own Mahdi, which is the Islamic savior, like the return, Yeshua, in Judaism, and Jesus in Christianity. So that person would be of the Luciferian bloodlines, and they wanted to install their version of the Antichrist. Lickety split, because they're starting to get a wind, so to speak, of that the world is changing. Things that work don't work anymore. The dark consciousness is fading. Their brains don't have implants and, remote control from some alien lower astral race anymore, those types of things. So, they're not really getting a good handle on the reason why, when there's a full moon or a new moon or a lion's gate or this gate, why the reptilians aren't coming to help them, which they're good friends. The bloodlines are very similar. So they decided to pull the ripcord, so to speak, on, I think it was Friday. Now, the reason why they decided to pull the ripcord on a pre-planned war, which was actually not planned by them. They did not plan this. This was something they had from years ago, as I had said, when my predecessor was still alive. They received instructions on how to create this war. They did not dream it. They do not know how to strategize the creation of a war. They've never passed War 101. Probably haven't read a whole lot on Sun Tzu or any of the other books on warfare there are out there. But trust me, this is not their plan. And the reason why I know that is because I can actually go into the old orders and instructions in the Hall of Records and in the system, and I can actually read everywhere you're going before you get there. Isn't that cool? That's called warfare, real warfare. Okay? So on Friday, I'm going to back you up to Friday afternoon.
Okay.
I had told you I had been having conversations with different groups of operatives and other people in different places around the world on Thursday night. Fairly extensive conversation. Well, word started getting around that the Rothschilds had not been the ones that had been providing the funding. The reason why these pallets of cash that they've been handing out since 1979 will never be cashable. What they are, what the origin of these things are, and they also started figuring out all of the different geopolitical moves that are going on behind the scenes and what's really happening. So they've done a lot of verifying, on Friday and Thursday and over the weekend even more. But the thing that they're now recognizing is, okay, this is not the way to go. And some of these guys are, not all operatives are like, your characters you see in movies. They're not all assassins. They're not all, some of these guys are scientists. They might have worked in DUMBs in the past. And I'm not saying that they did the best of things there, but they are intelligent and they do see the way that technologies could be used in a positive manner. But once you kind of get involved, they sell you sunshine to get down there. You're going to be at the forefront of all this new stuff. And in reality, they're just making, promoting genocide and a lot of things. I know it's not their fault, but I am getting to the war here. So, okay. So now we know the basis behind why the war would start there. That's number one. Number two, the prophecies extend through all of the religions about Armageddon and where it's going to start. And the final battle between good and evil will be in Israel. And so they're really working hard to get everybody on board for their quote unquote savior to come, which would actually be someone from the Luciferian bloodline. Behind the scenes, what we have seen happen is, you remember we talked about the puffy clouds where nothing really exists in Omega, but they can see it and so they could see a war chest of fake money, meaning just numbers in a back system. And we'll talk about this some more when we talk about what Rothschild doesn't understand. So they could see numbers in a system. And so this fake money showing was enough to get everything going.
Okay, so let's explain this just a little bit. We have talked about this on the news in the past, but what Kim is referring to is being able to look into a financial system and it looks like there's money there. And I'm talking about large amounts of money to start wars. But when you try to access the money and try to use it in any capacity, it's gone. It's not there. You can't actually get the money out. You can't do anything with it. So that's what she's referring to when she is talking about puffy clouds and all of that, because it's not really real. But these numbers are showing up and they're thinking they're real. They're not really real. So I want to play this other soundbite for you guys. And it's of Kim explaining. So Kim is ground command. She handles things that are on the ground. There is also air command. And air command are friends from multiple places, not on this planet. We have talked about the enforcer as well. So the enforcer, it kind of, he leads all of air control. And they came up with this really interesting way of trying to get rid of these fluffy clouds that are basically causing the deep state to think that they could regain control, but they can't. And I'm going to play this soundbite because it's really innovative what Kim and the enforcer were able to come up with. Take a listen.
So we decided to create for lack of a better term, a reverse Faraday cage in quantum computers. And what that does is it's like a reverse, let's call it a shield. You know how like if someone shoots the shield in the old time movies, they hold up the shield and it bounces right off and it goes back to them. So essentially what they're doing when they're trying to hack us since last night or yesterday afternoon is they're unable to actually see anything in the financial system, which is good. But in addition to that, the more they pound us with parasites and dark matter and all kinds, because like Mitter Corporation and some others, they do have some very sophisticated stuff. It actually goes back at them to the false clouds, and it actually helps with the dissipation of these things. So at this rate, we can estimate there'll be no more clouds in the sky for them to go for, probably within the next 15, 16 hours. And the more they do it, the less that you can see. So it doesn't work anyway. So you might as well just, and I wanted to give a big shout out to Mobius Military and CyberLife and all you guys for helping me get rid of this with no effort on my part. That was lovely. All I had to do was create a mirror like that or a shield.
Yeah.
So this is working out well.
And the reason, again, that this is really important is because this is giving them false hope. They are seeing, again, what Kim refers to as white puffy clouds, okay? So they may see some numbers. It sounds like she even got rid of that functionality now. But before, they could see numbers in the system and thought that there was all this money. There was just something, preventing them from getting it. So we'll start these wars. We'll do all this horrible stuff, and then we'll get all this money that we need to carry out World War III and, to be the rulers of whatever, the planet or whatever their end goal is. So if you get rid of them and their ability to see the numbers, then that starts to go away, right? And what do we need for war? In order for war to happen, you have to have money. The reason this whole conflict started in what seemed to be a very short period of time is because people were promised money. And they were supposed to get paid already. And then the deadline, gets extended. It gets extended. Well, you can only live on gumdrops and rainbows for so long before you just quit doing it. The operatives just start walking away and going to where there actually is a paycheck, which it just so happens that we can help them out with that, right? If they're willing to work towards the restoration of the planet, well then, let's talk. That's what CARE is all about, the restoration of the planet. And so you're seeing these final remnants. Will this war continue? I mean, I don't know how you have a war if you don't have money. And hopefully people start waking up and, again, this whole reverse shield thing that Kim did, I think is ingenious. The more they start to, try to get the numbers out of the system and money out of the system, the more it just erases the numbers altogether and their ability to really rely on that for any glimmer of hope. And that's what we need. We need all that to go away. because we're ready to move forward. And on that note, actually, I'm just going to tease this for those of you that haven't yet to, watch the newscast but plan to. Kim talks about care and something really big that is coming to care. We've talked about neutrino energy in the past. And there are these boxes that can be manufactured, and this can actually take people off of the power grids. This is a box that lasts about 50 years. I'm not going to give all the information, but it will power your whole house depending on how big your house is. And so we're starting to go into production for this. It's going to take some time. It's not going to happen overnight, but this is huge. Think of how much control that takes away from these big power players. Even control of where you can live. You can live anywhere now. Go out to the desert and live. You can make that a tropical oasis if you wanted to, if you had neutrino energy. So again, watch the newscast, check that out for all the details. So what should we do now, right? This war is out there. We think it's going to subside. They don't have any money. And pretty soon they're not even going to have the hopes of money because they're not even going to be able to see anything in the financial system. That whole thing, the white fluffy clouds are about to be taken away. I encourage you guys to do your research. We name dropped. We did some things today. So if this is brand new information to you, well, start doing some research. Go down some rabbit holes. Have an open mind. This does not work if you are holding on to some sort of ideology or religion or whatever it ends up being. We all came with some sort of baggage to wherever we're at now. And it is a learning process, and we're all growing and we're all rediscovering ourselves and who we are. And it is a process. But if you come with that baggage, try to leave it at the door, because unless you think openly and honestly about this and just let the information come at you and take it in, as opposed to having some preconceived idea, you're probably not going to learn very much, Keep asking questions, keep thinking critically. And if you enjoyed today's episode, I do encourage you to share our show with people that you care about. This is a great opportunity for them to start hearing things that, you're just not going to hear on mainstream media or the alternative side of things. So share this with people you care about. Visit our website, unitednetwork.tv, to get on-demand access to all of our newscasts, which of course include the World Situation Reports. We've got original series and health and wellness videos that can help you guys. If you want to connect with us, so actually do some typing, that old-fashioned thing, do some typing, connect with us. You can do that through Telegram. We've got 3 options for you. We have the Care General Updates channel, which provides information about all things restoration. We have United Network News channel, which we include the links to our newscasts as well as our in-depth field messenger reports, which, by the way, the in-depth field messenger reports are absolutely free. So if you follow that Telegram channel, if you're not already a member where you can see the entire newscast, at least you can watch all the field messenger reports. And then we do have a Telegram channel that's specific for people that are creating field messenger reports, because we want to help you in this process. We have a production team there who can answer your questions and make sure you feel comfortable. All right, guys, this has been a blast. Pun intended, not pun intended, with everything that's going on in Israel. This is The Rundown. I'm Sunny Galt for United Network News, signing off.